Welcome to LEGO Video Resource. I'm Jason Wietholter. In this video, we're talking about backdrops for deposition video. Backdrops are a great way to keep your deposition video looking consistent from scene to scene, or from recording to recording, and from deposition to deposition. So what are the kind of things to look for in a backdrop? Well, first of all, because you're moving from place to place, you want something that is compact, easy to transport. So a lot of times you can find collapsible style backdrops. And these aren't backdrops that you fold up and have to set up stands and a truss or a bar. These are screens that are designed, or backdrops that are designed to be collapsible and then have their own kind of rigid frame to stand up with. So I actually have a reflector for photo and video that works almost the exact same as a collapsible backdrop that I'm going to show you how it works. So this is essentially what a collapsible backdrop would look like. And in the in this black part here, it actually has this rigid metal frame. And this rigid metal frame allows this to stand up. So if I just hold this in front of me, you can see it allows it to stand on its own right in front of me with very little support from me. So I can lean this against a wall, I can lean this against a chair, I can lean this in a lot of different places. Now, it looks a little bit cumbersome. I mean, right now I'm holding this thing and it's rigid. I can move it around a little bit, but it's not going anywhere in particular. So how does this really become collapsible, or how does this become something that's actually portable? Because again, imagine, this is only a few feet wide, but you might have one in a deposition that's 7 feet wide. In fact, the background that's behind me right now is a collapsible backdrop. It's a 5 foot by 7 foot collapsible backdrop. So how does this become collapsible, or how does this become movable from one place to the other? Well, it's a little bit tricky. I'll demonstrate it for you. Hopefully I'll do it right. It takes some practice, and I would encourage you, practice this before you go to a deposition, because the first time I ever took a deposition, I hadn't practiced how to put this away, and I spent maybe 15-20 minutes just fighting with the backdrop to make it fit into the bag, and I think it didn't even actually fit into the bag. I think I just carried it out, and then the whole thing popped open to the back of my car. But these are really very similar to the reflectors that you would see in your car. Again, this is just a small reflector for photo and video, but it works the same way as a backdrop. It's just smaller. So the way you collapse it is you take one corner and you grab the other corner. So I'm going to take one corner, grab the other corner, fold it together so it's like a taco. So now I've kind of got this backdrop folded in half. I'm holding it with one hand in the middle, but it's kind of folded up like a taco. Now the next thing you do is you take your other hand, in my case this is my left hand, and I'm opening it the palm out towards you, and I'm grabbing the front of these two, this fold, I'm grabbing the front fold. And now what I'm going to do with my hand up here is I'm going to let go of that front. So now I'm just holding the front fold with my left hand, with the palm of my left hand. So I'm going to let go, and now I'm just going to twist my left hand in. So now I'm going from palm out to palm in towards me, and the whole thing folds up into a very small, nice, neat little package. And again, this is just a video reflector, but the principles all work exactly the same way. The same kind of rigid frame, the same kind of material almost. It's all found in this backdrop that's behind me, just that is much bigger. And in that case, it's a cloth backdrop, different color than this. This is designed to be a diffuser, but they work pretty much the same way. So that's how it becomes collapsible. And like I said, practice that, because it may look easy, but I've done it 100 or 1,000 or more times now. So that's really easy for me to do, but it's not something that's very easy to do if you've never done it before. So now it's all folded up, the way that it comes out is you just kind of let it go, and the whole thing pops out, just like that. So that is the basic size or framing of a backdrop and how it gets folded up. So it's really important that it's something that's collapsible and easy to take with you. Now, I mentioned earlier a bag. That's great to have a bag to fit it in, because that doesn't want to stay in that shape the whole time. It wants to expand. So if you put it in a bag, A, it keeps it in its smaller shape, it's easier to transport. B, it protects it, because if you have a backdrop that is not black, but maybe like an off gray, like the one behind me, it tends to get dirty. It picks up dirt and dust, hair, you name it. Whatever it runs into, it'll kind of pick up from that. And so having a bag helps to protect that backdrop and increase its longevity for you. Let's talk about colors for a moment. There are a bunch of different colors that you can get, and really a bunch of different designs and patterns. One thing that's really important is that you can get reversible backdrops. So 2 different colors on 2 different sides. So for example, the one behind me, it's gray on one side and black on the other. So it works really, really well if I want to, change the look and feel of what it is I'm shooting. I can go from gray to black. So which color should you get for deposition video? That's kind of up to you and what it is that you shoot and how it is you feel most comfortable. I personally recommend this neutral gray, this mid-gray kind of color, because it's really in between everything. It doesn't typically clash with what most people are wearing. Men, when they wear gray suits, they're typically brighter or darker than this neutral gray. This neutral gray is kind of in between. In fact, I've worn a gray suit on some other videos, and it blends a little bit, but it's not too terribly bad because the gray on the suit, or at least what you're focusing on, is going to be a slightly different color and a different shape than that backdrop. But neutral colors are better. I wouldn't recommend getting, chroma key blue or chroma key green. White and black are both a little bit harsh. So some neutral color like this, some gray, maybe a background with a bit of a pattern in it that is like a kind of a, abstract grayish blackish pattern would work pretty well. But personally, I just prefer neutral gray. Again, it's kind of the most neutral, most in between. Your eyes tend to forget about it as you're watching the video. So as you're watching me talk, as you're listening to me talk, you tend to forget about that background behind me. And that's really the goal. That's the goal of the background, is to kind of eliminate distractions and become a forgotten set piece, essentially. I've got a couple of set pieces in front of the background just to give the background a little bit of interest. But in a deposition, you probably wouldn't want any interest in the background because you want all the focus to be on what it is that the person is saying. So you would probably want to just use something as neutral as possible so that me as the viewer, if I'm sitting there watching a deposition, I forget there's a backdrop. I forget there's anything going on in that video except for the person talking. Like, that's all, as a viewer, I should care about, is what is that person on screen saying and doing. And I shouldn't care about pictures. I shouldn't care about equipment. I shouldn't care about all this other stuff in the background. So in a deposition, that's all you want. Here in this video, maybe you want a little bit more interest about what it is that we're talking about. So I've got cameras set up behind me and lenses to give it a little bit more interest. But in a deposition, you don't want anything to really distract from who it is that's talking or giving the testimony. So choose a neutral color, and the more muted, the better, but neutral is better always. So what size should you get? Well, usually larger is better because you have more flexibility, but that needs to be within reason, because you could get a really big 10-foot wide or 12-foot wide or 15-foot wide backdrop, but that'd be impossible to carry around, and you really don't need it for deposition video because you don't need that big of a backdrop for deposition video. But here in deposition video, like I said, the one behind me I think is a 5-foot by 7-foot, and it covers my widescreen framing. It's probably 3 feet behind me, 4 feet behind me maybe. So it covers plenty of space between me. It covers the frame behind me. I've got quite a bit of room actually that I could zoom out and see a little bit more of this backdrop before I get to the edges. But 5 to 7 feet, and it's plenty tall for the frame that you're seeing and the frame that you're going to see in a deposition. Kind of from the top of a desk to the top of somebody's head. 5 feet tall is plenty tall. The only time you might need to kind of adjust that or move it is if you just need the whole backdrop to kind of move up and down to be able to cover, like if you have somebody that's really, really tall. you might want to move the whole backdrop up. You can get a stand for a backdrop and actually clip the top of the backdrop to that stand and then be able to move the whole thing up and down. And that's actually what I've basically done here. I have two stands on either side of the backdrop and then a bar that runs across the top, and the whole thing is kind of mounted to that bar. And so I've got the whole thing lifted up to give me plenty of headroom. But in most depositions, you're not going to need that. Another trick is if you don't have a stand, you can take a couple of like file boxes and put them underneath the backdrop and then kind of stand the backdrop on top of that. It works well to kind of lift it up by 12 inches or so. But in terms of sizes, I think typically you can get 4x6 and 5x7. 4x6, you can get by with that, but if you've got the choice, go ahead and get the 5x7, because the 5x7 will make life a little bit easier when it comes to framing a deponent. So those are backdrops for deposition video. Neutral color, make it something that's collapsible and easy to take with you, and make something that's going to cover your frame, typically a 5 foot by 7 foot backdrop. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you found this video helpful or interesting, I encourage you to click subscribe down below, because as we post new content to this channel, you'll be the first to know about it. Also, if you have a question or you want more details on something we talked about, let us know in the comments and we'll be able to answer those there or maybe in a future video. Again, thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next time on Legal Video Resource.